Hey guys, so we're back with another video. Now, if you haven't seen the previous video that I did, which talked about American Horror Story season 11 all the way up to 13, you guys could go check that video out and what I think other future season might look like. Now, today we're going to be talking about something that I think that find me interesting, that I think they could expand on. The thing that I feel as if I think it's needed because we didn't get that much from it, even though we know the process of it. So we're talking about the history of the Supremes in American Horror Story, Coven as well as Apocalypse, and you could even say Roanoke as well as Murder House. Now, these four seasons has a connection to, I would say, the Seven Wonders. Now, we know that the introduction to the Seven Wonders, we know that it takes a special person or a witch to master, all the wonders, right? So we learned that already based on the past season 3 as well as season 8, and as well as how you could extend that to season 6 as well. So the process of Supreme, we know that it would take you to take the 7 wonders test, which allows you to master telekinesis, concilium, transmutation, pyrochrosis, divination, vitalum vitalis, and dissension, right? Now we know that in every history of Supreme, there is always one that you could say each Supreme may not be the same, and I'm gonna get more into the video about that. Now, the very first Supreme that Ryan Murphy mentioned was Scaffage, which they announced that Scaffage was also played by Lady Gaga's character, was the very first Supreme. Now, we didn't know what separate her powers from the other Supremes, but I also always say that not every Supreme, maybe even if they mastered the 7 wonders, not all the Supremes are the same. Like, for an example, the Scavenge was allowed to use the land and the people as well as the blood moon to basically control a amount of people in order for them to do, like, I would say, her bidding. So we never got like the full thing of what makes her more different from the rest of the other Supreme. Now, the second Supreme that we saw in American Horror Story season 3 was called Prudence Mather, which was the Supreme who basically sacrificed herself in order for the witches to went to one part of Salem to the next. So she basically did a sacrifice in order for the coven to like flourish, right? And that's how we end up with what we saw today. So she sacrificed herself, and she basically gave a sacred taking in order for a new Supreme to rise very quickly. Now, we don't know if now we also know, every Supreme may not be, related. Only some few bloodlines that we might say that has a connection. So where I'm getting with this is that, I'm just going through every Supreme that we have known so far. Now, after Prudence has died, and, then we had a new Supreme who was called Marion Wharton, which was the creator of the Miss Robo show for exceptional young ladies, as well as she wrote a lot of children books, right? And I guess her job was to become like the mediator to basically shelter more people, so in order for them to do more of the 7 wonders, the more the school has, the better they could create more people. Now, one of the Supremes that I feel as if we should get more of the backstory is Mimi de Lumpre, which was, I would say, a French Supreme, which also was connected to season 1, Constant Langdon, as well as, she is part of the family of the Langdons. From what we have heard, if she is a ascending or a supreme, we could say the bloodline of Michael Langdon becoming, Antichrist or even a supreme or alpha was possible due to the fact that in the lineage she was a supreme. So eventually that will, go down to the history. I'm surprised that, Constant doesn't have like witchy powers, but time will tell, right? The other supreme that we had, and she during like a segregation era, was Nealey Layton, which was the supreme before I would say Fiona. She basically, her and Mary Laveau helped basically segregate the part of the coven in order for them to survive without bloodshed, right? She signed that treaty, South Ward, as well as I forgot which ward that the witches are from. And then because of Nealey Layton, dying due to the fact that Fiona wanted to like take her powers, she was the only supreme that we kind of like got a little hint of. Now, besides learning like the 7 wonders, every supreme has like a power that's like unique to them prior to mastering the 7 wonders. Like for Cordelia, which we're gonna get into, Nealey Layton, we didn't know what was her like main power besides the 7 wonders, but she got killed early due to the fact that Fiona was probably the youngest supreme that we had from what the story wasn't telling, because she took her inheritance very early. Now, Fiona's power that we learned in the first few episodes, spoiler alert if you haven't watched season 3, Fiona's first power that we saw is that she could like suck the life out of other, living things and drain it to a point where like they become like skeleton. Now, Fiona is probably the longest reigning supreme from what I've learned. She also is the only supreme that is related to the following next supreme after her, which is her daughter. Now, Fiona also have 2 powers. So besides telekinesis that she did in the very first episode, this was one of the powers I find that was unique to her, where she absorbed the entire life out of one of the patients that she had working under him. Now, due to the fact that Fiona couldn't find like a successor and she wanted to stay in power forever, that's how they end up, dying and having to find a successor. Now, we know that the Supreme is one female witch who embodies countless gifts, even all of them, which is the, the meaning behind a Supreme and how they could definitely be like at the very top of the food chain, right? Now, we would love to see a season just based on just the Supremes and how each Supreme, they could make an episode where each Supreme, how they basically gave their life or transition to the next generation. Because I think some Supremes tend to be more stronger than others. I think due to the fact that if some of them like their power or like waning down, eventually that's gonna leave them regardless. But I feel as if some Supremes are stronger or more clever than others. Like for an example, the Supreme that was currently we had was mastering certain things. Now it was Cordelia, but Cordelia, the first thing we learned she could have done, I think she had the power of sight, which I don't think that falls in between of the 7 wonders. That was a power unique to her. Now, Cordelia is the only Supreme from what we know that is related to the previous Supreme, which was Fiona Good. I'm not sure if that ever happens in like generational things, but I know that she is the only Supreme that is related to the previous Supreme. Now, I feel like Cordelia has a lot of knowledge of the history of Supreme, and that she was able to create other things that other Supreme hasn't done. I think out of all the Supreme, she is probably a good leader, due to the fact she don't want to be like her mother, and she try her best to like keep the coven at a certain position where she doesn't have to like use other people to get where she is. And she's probably the only Supreme that did things out of the goodwill to help the betterment of the people, betterment of her people. So now, due to the fact that Cordelia did what she did in Apocalypse to sacrifice herself to let like a new Supreme rise, so we could say that Cordelia, knowing the betterment and the state that she was in, she tried her best to have different alternative plans. But she was the current reigning Supreme, and due to the fact she had to find like a successor real quick, due to the fact that Mallory as well as Michael Langdon were like two people that are gunning for her powers. Now the Supreme we have now, which is Mallory, she is the only Supreme that was able to complete the ability of Tempest Infinitum, which is able to reverse or go back in time and change a past event or even something bigger. Now, after that happened, we saw that, Mallory was able to change the end of the world due to the fact that the apocalypse never happened. So that way she was able to, save humanity from Michael Langdon, which was, the Antichrist. Now, from the only thing that we haven't known, we saw that when she went back in time, Cordelia is still now the current reigning Supreme, but can two Supremes live in the same timeline? That's another question that they never answered. Did she lose her powers to give it back to Cordelia in order for her after, changing, the events? Now, I think that besides the 7 wonders, I think there are other powers that are aside from, the main powers to becoming a Supreme. But I would love them to have like a season that is basically based on just the history of Supremes. Like we could call it American Horror Story Salem, or American Horror Story, past tense or something, that they could, give us like the full origins like of each Supreme, because we know that Scavenge is the first Supreme originally, and we don't know how she got like her full powers, because they say that she prayed to like the old gods. So that's another thing I would love for them to expand on, because I think the Supreme idea is very cool, because we get to see different type of powers from each Supreme. Because like I told you guys before, like I feel like each Supreme has like a different ability, and those main abilities what makes them who they are, and then they could add into like other abilities. Like Cordelia said, she could foresee the future, which is part of her power of the sight, and she could, from learning from the future, she could predict what's going to occur, so she could fix that. That's how they end up. I think Cordelia as well as Myrtle Snow, they know a lot about different other powers besides the 7 wonders. But like I said, guys, this was my history of Supreme and what makes the Supreme so powerful, and I would love to see a season based on that. Next up will be the history of Alpha and the Warlocks. So I hope you guys like this video. Like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.